Hello and welcome to Move the Line, presented by 4for4 Bets. I'm Ryan Noonan, joined here as always by my friend Connor Allen, continuing our divisional preview series. A handful here in the books already. NFC's already all the way through. A handful of the AFC as well. Excited to keep it going, buddy. What's going on?
Yeah, not a whole lot. It's getting crazy though at 4for4. We've brought on like 4 new DFS guys, new fantasy guys. We're announcing a new betting guy here in like a couple hours. We got new deals. Like it's our boss Luis has told us like we needed to be loud and keeps putting loud in all caps. And I think we are almost certainly overkill. And I'm sure other people in the industry are like, what is going on in this place? But it's working. We love it. The subscribers love it. The people are coming in, and we're excited for an awesome year. It's going to be awesome. So,
right, when you feel like you can provide value to people, right? And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I feel like we can provide value to people in any way that you're speculating on football. I feel like there is something at 4for4 for you, whether it is tools based or, pick related. These shows, this is free content for you. A lot of other stuff that we have obviously is behind the paywall, especially on the betting side in terms of picks and all that comes of that. We want to make sure that people know you have a lot of choices out there, and we appreciate people that roll with us all season long. It is, I know, speak for Connor, I'm comfortable doing that in this instance. It's the best part of what we do when we can help people win, help people become smarter about decisions that they make, understand the markets, because it is definitely something for some people, depending on where your state pops up in the last handful of years. It's new to some people. Then you're coming over from the fantasy space, or you just understand football and watch football, and you want to have some sort of fun in terms of speculating on it week to week. I feel like we're a great place for you to do so. So yeah, excited about all the new talent, some that's been announced, some that still is to come. All that good stuff is going to continue to roll out here as football slowly approaches. We are in a fun time of the year. We are, actual football on TV. We got preseason games, some actual training camp battles that they transpire on the field that aren't just shorts and t-shirt Olympics that I think we see all the time, which is fun to see as well. Again, we're just excited that we are here. So if you want access to all those things that we're doing, tools, articles, everything that we have, the betting subscription is your best bet to do it. Again, it gets you access to everything. So all articles, tools, rankings, projections. If you're still grinding best ball, you want to get into some of the DFS content that's going to be obviously coming here shortly. Anything that you're going to need here. We're still firing on futures. I pushed out a bunch of defensive futures here in the last couple of days. We'll have more to come there. And some of the staff that is coming on today even will be pushing out some of that stuff. I think a name that folks will be excited about being a part of what we have going on. So 4for4.com/plans. You can also head over to the Twitter feed at 4for4 football and find lots of different deals too. Lots of different sub-partner deals for you to get access to some of the stuff that we're doing for even cheaper. Even more on that to come here shortly as well. So definitely stay tuned and check it out. Again, we want to make it accessible to you. And we're going to continue to find lots of ways to do that. So if you want to find some of the old episodes here that we've been doing on these divisional previews, 4for4 Bets on the YouTube channel. Podcast is Move the Line. Anywhere you're listening to podcasts, you can go ahead and do that as well. Subscribe so you don't miss a show. And be a pal. Take 30 seconds, review the show, helps other people find us, keeps these shows free. It's other people there in the YouTube comments and stuff like that. They can see us as well. Let us know what your pick is for the AFC North. We're going to roll through that one today. One of the best divisions in football, one we're really excited to unpack here, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. Let's not waste any more time. Lots of announcements and lots of other good stuff. Good to jump in here and talk AFC North.
Let's do it.
All right, from a scheduling standpoint, these teams are playing the AFC West and NFC East. The Ravens are your defending division champs here. They are 10-1 to win the Super Bowl. This is readily available across all markets, plus 550 to win the AFC. They are plus 145 to win the division, and the win total 10.5, pretty flat odds. And those are not a lot of variations on the books. The Ravens futures are pretty flat no matter where you go. Absolutely dominant football team last season. Almost never happened, which is hard to think about. If we go back to where we were at times last year, coming into the season, your 2023 league MVP, Lamar Jackson, was available for any team in the league to scoop up at a certain point. Obviously, that worked out, and you had a fantastic season. We were excited, I think, thinking back to about Todd Monken and the new things that he could do, things that he had success in previous stops, and what can we have with a Todd Monken offense, and I think he was able to bring out a new level of play from Lamar. The offense did stay true, I think, to its foundation, power running team. But overall, they created more explosives, and you really saw that. Again, really one of the most dynamic offenses in the league at times last season too. Fresh set of weapons. From a skills position standpoint, they're mostly running it back outside the addition of Derrick Henry, which is a big addition there. They're different in a few key areas, though, and along the offensive line and defensive coordinator. And I think those are pretty massive changes. What do you got here in the Ravens?
Yeah, that's my biggest notes. I think you hit on the offense, which I expect to still be very good. Probably a top 5 to 7 offense, somewhere in that range, despite losing 3 starting offensive linemen. They added Derrick Henry, which I think is a bit of a weird fit given how often that they have Lamar in shotgun, and Derrick Henry's historically been kind of like an under center guy, builds momentum with his first 4 or 5 steps, and then is much harder to tackle. So I'm interested to see how that kind of disparity plays out there specifically. And then defensively, lost Jadeveon Clowney, Patrick Queen, Geno Stone, replaced Darby with Nate Wiggins, who's a rookie. We were not really enamored in general with this talent, like heading into last season. And obviously we're wildly wrong about that because they finished as like a top 3 unit. I think that I was ahead of market on that just by saying they could be a top 15 defense, top 10 defense. And I think that, we were in slight disagreement there. But now at this point, last year they finished 2nd in EPA, 6th in success rate. But given the talent they lost and losing Mike McDonald, I think that more likely than not, they're going to finish in the 8 to 12 range here defensively. And I think that that's pretty conservative. Obviously, defense is like one of the least stable things year to year in terms of metrics. So I think that they could fall down a good bit and not really, not be able to lean on that defense specifically. So I think the Ravens are still going to be good. They still have a lot of good players. Like Harbaugh historically has been an awesome coach. They basically consistently churn out 9+ wins virtually every year. I will say their schedule to start is really tough. And if you do want to bet on the Ravens, I think that there probably is a better time to start. They have at Kansas City against the Raiders, which is their easiest game, at Dallas versus Buffalo, at Cincinnati in their first 5 games. Really, really tough slate start. So I'm not sure that I'm necessarily want to fade the Ravens right off the bat. I think under 10.5 is a fine look. But I think that it's more like a wait and see approach for me here specifically.
Yeah, good call out there. I mean, there's those 2 big changes are massive, and you made a good call there too. It's just not sticky year over year defensively to have that happen, but we're not even really running it back with the same thing. I think we're going to see the impact of how good Mike McDonald is at his job in the same way that maybe we saw that with pulling like a Shane Steichen, for instance, out of Philly, and what happened to Philly's offense last year towards the tail end of the season. And how he elevated the Colts. I think you're going to see that a little bit here with the Ravens. Now, Zach Orr stays in-house linebacker coach, gets promoted to defensive coordinator. But what does he do? This is a former NFL player. What does he want to do in terms of putting his stamp on this team versus learning from his short time with Mike McDonald in terms of what he does from a philosophical standpoint? Because McDonald, I think, is just kind of one of those dudes. I think we're going to see it in the next couple of years. We raved about it when we were touching on the Seahawks a couple of weeks ago. They do a tremendous job out of getting more out of less in terms of the talent. Again, think about what happened here in terms of their pass rush guys. This is a team, we just didn't have massive expectations with a Jadeveon Clowney based off of what happened in the last handful of years. Again, I have made this joke, not even a joke. It is factually correct. Kyle Van Noy was on McAfee in studio for the first couple of weeks of the season last year. They dusted him off, put him on, and he had 9 sacks. They do a great job at disguising pressure. They don't blitz. They blitz at a pretty low rate. I think they probably blitz more with Zach Orr than what they did with Mike McDonald. But that doesn't mean they get home as more or more. So does that actually translate, and how can they be successful in doing that? I think it's going to be really, really interesting. It wasn't just McDonald that left either. You had Anthony Weaver, D-line coach, now the Dolphins DC. Denard Wilson, DB coach, now the Titans DC. So it wasn't just McDonald. It's a lot of other coaches there as well. And then, again, you pay Lamar, you start to have to shift talent a little bit. And all of a sudden you have some just holes that you didn't have in terms of a talented roster that I think, to your point, we didn't think was a great roster. But sometimes it's just one of these teams that just finds a way year in and year out. And I think it's going to be harder for them to do so this year. So again, probably still at least middle of the pack, probably towards the top end, to be fair. But again, not a top 2 defense like they were for most of the season too. And I think most people are underselling the mass changes along the offensive line. This is, I think, maybe as impactful. Now, again, this is a team that I think will figure it out somehow. But no team is losing more starting snaps along the offensive line from last year to this year. It's not particularly close than the Ravens. They are like, it's like thousands of snaps. They're counting on like multiple first-year players or an actual rookie and like basically a guy they redshirted last year to step in to regular reps. Ronnie Stanley by name is fantastic. He's played 31 games over the past 5 years. He had 2 separate knee injuries last season and played the worst football of his career when he was out there. It wasn't great. Now, again, they find a way to do it. Lamar helps. His skill set can maybe limit that impact, but like poor Derrick Henry, you get him out of Tennessee, like finally this guy's going to have some room to operate and he's not going to be hit at or behind the line of scrimmage so often. It's like, I don't know. It might be a little bit rough comparatively too. So those are big concerns for me with this team. And then the schedule, as you mentioned, is tough. So this is still a playoff team. I'd be shocked if they're not a playoff team. Do I feel like they're like the clear number 2 team in the conference behind the Chiefs? I feel like they think they are, and I get why they do, but I'm not sure that they are. I think it's probably a little bit closer with some of the other teams in the conference. But yeah, I think I would lean under, but it's not a bet that I want to make. They strong every year.
I got a spicy way to play it later that we'll talk about after we go through the division.
Okay, love it.
But yeah, I think it's kind of fun. And then Jeff added here, talking Ravens without mentioning Justin Tucker as well. Yes, he's a great kicker. I mean, no shame there. We know that he's awesome. Not going to spend too much time on it.
Yeah, well, Jeff likes his kickers, so
he does. He loves the kickers.
Yeah, I mean, tough schedule, and they again part of the schedule issues that impact 3 of the 4 teams here. They play each other 6 times, right? They have to play the other teams here that are all strong to at least decent, right? And then outside of that, the unique 3: Buffalo, at Houston, and then Tampa Bay. So like, not a cupcake schedule in terms of what they get there. So I tend to come on here every year for some reason and say I lean under in the Ravens, and it never really works out. So like I don't want to take that strong stance, but man, I think these are massive changes in terms of the DC and the O line. So lean a little bit under there. We'll pivot to the next team, Cincinnati, 15-1 to win the Super Bowl. That's on FanDuel, best price there. FanDuel has basically the best numbers on Cincinnati if you are pro Bengals. Plus 750 to win the AFC. They are plus 165 to win the division. They are also lined at 10.5 wins, which I think is interesting. Obviously, Super Bowl prices there drastically different. Another team last year, pretty high expectations coming into the season, and then we just kind of had the annual Joe Burrow derailed in camp kind of thing. It just could have been worse. It wasn't as severe, but if you remember when he went down, like it looked like, is that an ACL? Was that an Achilles? Strained calf? But a slow start. They got absolutely destroyed by the Browns in the first week of the season. All of a sudden, it's 1-3. They go into Tennessee and lose to Tennessee 27-3. And I'm forced to wear a silly hat on the show because I lost a bet to Clark. Then shortly after that, though, it did turn around for a little bit with Burrow in the lineup. 1-4 in a row. Nice wins in San Francisco. They beat the Bills. Those are back-to-back wins. And then he gets hurt again. Week 11. Season's basically over. We ride Jake Browning and a pretty disappointing defense down the stretch. Now, again, they actually were live to make the playoffs, which is kind of wild to think about what happened towards the tail end of the season. They couldn't put it together. Again, they got Burrow back. He seems to be like he's on a pitch count. So again, we obviously every year have to have something Burrow related in terms of training wheels, kid gloves in training camp, but it seems at least a little bit optimistic. The T. Higgins stuff all off season kind of play itself out. They bring him back. Let's run it back and give it one more go. But when you look at the schedule, Connor, it is hard not to be optimistic about the Bengals compared to what the rest of the division faces.
Yeah, I mean, they're favored in 14 of 17 games this season. And then they start off the year, Patriots, then they have at Kansas City, but then they have Washington and then Carolina, and then they have the Ravens, but it's at home. So it's like, obviously they're playing 2 really good teams, but one of them's at home and against a Ravens team that we expect their defense to regress a lot. And I think is basically like a coin flip, plus they're at home. And then, against Kansas City, which, they've given Kansas City some fits in years past. So it's not like that's necessarily a loss right away, but they get 3 of the worst teams in the league basically right off the rip here. And then it continues. I mean, they get the Giants eventually. They get the, other teams that are just not nearly as good. Titans at some point, the Broncos. I mean, there's a lot of games
Panthers.
that are, not gimmies, but like, I mean, they're like 6-7 point favorites, and this is like before preseason, which is like, you normally don't see that big of spreads early in the season because teams haven't suffered any injuries, things like that, yada, yada. But I think this offense here, I mean, it's just so exciting because their offensive line is solid. We have them ranked 15th, like very much middle of the pack here. Instead of Joe Mixon at running back, they have Zach Moss and Chase Brown, who I think are great, kind of like 1-2 combo that'll play some kind of role. And I really like that their receiving depth this year, I think, is the best that they've ever had. They got rid of Tyler Boyd, but Andre Yoshivas showed out like big time last year. He's my guy. We bet on him a couple times. Always showed out for the squad. But in general, though, I mean, they drafted Jermaine Burton too. Like, I think Burton probably plays a role at some point as well. I mean, he's buried on the depth chart right now. But again, mid-season, early in the season, I think that he'll eventually come on there and play another role. So they have insane receiving depth. Burrow's back. He's healthy. Like, I think this offense is legitimate, like, best offense in the league upside if everything clicks pretty easily here. And then their defense, I don't know. I think I'll let you talk about their defense here because I really don't know what to make of it. They're like fine. They added a couple of good safeties, but I don't know. Are you excited about them at all? Like, I feel like that's kind of what I worry about.
Yeah, I mean, so I think they're going to struggle against the run again. Last year, you were able to gash them for sure. Part of it was they were probably the worst tackling team in the league. And we've had kind of a yin and yang with this kind of like core group with the tackling stuff, and then it bounces back the next year. So I feel like there's probably something there. Like, they'll probably be a little bit better. They have nice depth in the secondary. You mentioned bring back Von Bell, Geno Stone, who is capable. Like, I really like Jordan Battle. I was hoping he could get starter reps this year because I think him in the box is like a box safety could be really exciting. It's a fine group. Like, Trey Hendrickson is a difference maker. Sam Hubbard's okay, but good enough. I think we all think good things about the coach here and what he can do. They need to get someone to step into DJ Reader's basically role there last year, and didn't even go great with DJ Reader, but he tore his quad late in the season, a little bit early 30s. They let him walk. He signed with Detroit in free agency. Probably doesn't come and play right away. They bring in Sheldon Rankins, who Bengals have this tendency of, like, if you like rip them during the season and you're a free agent, like they're probably bringing you in. Like, they don't have a big scouting department. They don't do things in a lot of traditional ways. It's like, all right, well, that guy played really well against us. Geno Stone had a couple of picks against us. Sheldon Rankins sacked Jake Browning 3 times. Let's sign him. But yeah, again, he's more of like a pass rushing interior defensive lineman than a run stuffing guy. They drafted Chris Jenkins out of Michigan. They use some other draft capital on some guys that could be maybe interior run stuffers. I think it's still a below average run stopping offense or defensive line, but I think the secondary can be okay. I think there's a lot of depth there. So it's again, they're playing from ahead, like, it's a little bit easier too, right? That was the scenario that they really didn't have. They're in a lot of trailing and neutral game scripts last year, and teams just had no problem just pounding it on them all season long. So probably still a place to attack explosives, like longest rush props against the Bengals will be something we'll do again. But they gave up a ton of explosives in the pass game too. I don't expect to see that quite as much this year. So I think it can be an okay unit. And you touched on the one thing I'm really excited about in terms of the playmakers. Like, Boyd is really good in the slot, but you couldn't put him anywhere else. Jamar Chase in the slot with Yoshi or Burton or whatever else opposite of Higgins outside. Jamar Chase in the slot can be very, very exciting for a new ceiling level, I think, for this offense and for Chase and the connection with Burrow, all that. I think that is a really sneaky upside piece here with Boyd being gone. We could have some really explosive Jamar Chase games this year.
Yeah, it should be super fun. I think so. I went on a Bengals podcast, so I have a couple of bets here. I prep for these because normally I'll just do like a side or total or like some kind of like future. So I got 3 Bengals bets here, but I'll stick in like a player prop region because that's kind of where you're at with Chase. Joe Burrow to have 4,500 plus passing yards is plus 425 at DK. In his 2 healthy seasons, he has 4,475 and 4,600, and now is the best weapons of his career. So, I mean, I think 4-1 again is more like a bet that he stays healthy and the offense doesn't completely collapse. So I think that's kind of worth a fun look there specifically. Another one, Bengals more wins than the Ravens in the first 5 games. I think that's a really great bet. Again, we already went over the schedule, but briefly, Ravens play Chiefs, Cowboys, Bills, Bengals, Raiders. And then, the Bengals get Pats, Commanders, Panthers, Ravens, and then Chiefs. So again, I think that we're looking at 3 to 5 wins for the Bengals and 2 to 3 maybe wins for the Ravens. So it's like their range of outcomes here don't overlap a whole lot, and you're getting only minus 125. So I think that's a good look. And then I think division, maybe Bengals win the division at plus 165 on FanDuel is a reasonable look. Although the more that I dug into the division, the more that I liked kind of the Browns, and I think the Steelers are a little more frisky than what most are given to. So I don't know if I feel as good about that, but again, I'll talk about another way to play it a little bit later.
I like it. Yeah, I remember you touching on the first 5 heads up thing, which I think is a really good look. It's also probably, you can make the case, it's probably the best offensive line that he's played in front of too. That was definitely an early Burrow issue, was the offensive line. They weren't great last year, but they were healthy. Like the continuity was pretty awesome. Now, again, that like never happens. And then they used a first round pick on Amarius Mims, who seems to be doing really well. Like thought he might be a little bit more project because he's a little bit inexperienced, but he can step into right tackle. Trent Brown's there as well. He is decent when he's on the field at this point of his career. He's played 30 games the last 5 seasons, so on the field is not a strength of his. But I think they have depth and talent there maybe that they haven't had in years past. So that is also another element to kind of a feather in their cap this year that they just didn't have. So again, back to the schedule. They faced the toughest schedule in the league last year, won 9 games, played more than half the year without Burrow, definitely more than half the year without a healthy Burrow. And then again, you have to compare it in terms of like betting in this division against who else they're playing. And like, again, the teams that they're playing in terms of the division, the conference wise, it's the AFC East, 3 really good teams, right? 3 solid teams, 1 bad team. The AFC South, I think we all kind of agree, like 3 possible playoff contenders, and then 1 we definitely don't think in Tennessee. And then you have the NFC South. Don't know what to make up and down, but there's definitely 1 team that I think we agree the Panthers are the worst team in that division. The Bengals play all of them. They play the Patriots, the Titans, and the Panthers. So the rest of their like divisional foes here have to kind of hang with the other 3 good teams in the other divisions. They get the best end of that massively in all 3 instances. So like those are the only 3 opponents that differ from the rest of the division foes. So again, where you play some of the other teams matters, home and away, all those things are impactful, but like that's a big piece for them too. So again, it comes down to Burrow staying healthy. I think the defense is better than it was last year. I'm kind of with you. Like I'm not running to jump over 10.5 wins or the division, but I do like the Bengals to win the division. So it just is a really tough division because I think they're going to beat up on each other, and you're 1 key injury away from any of these teams, and it flips massively. So Bengals would be my lead to win the division, but not a bet that I'm like dying to make at price.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, we kind of touched on the Browns. We'll shift there. Cleveland next, 40-1. It's a pretty sizable jump down in price wise for them to win the Super Bowl. You can get them at 22-1 to win the AFC on DraftKings. DraftKings also has them the best price to win the North here at 6-1. And they have an 8.5 win total, slightly juiced to the over. Very unique 2023 when you go through all that happened. In a lot of ways, though, I think they are one of the easiest teams to handicap. Like, I don't want to overdo it. We can get into all of like the weeds here, but like from a 50,000 foot view, this team is basically running it back on both sides of the ball for all intents and purposes. And 2024 will be dictated by the play of Deshaun Watson. Simple as that. What do you got on the Browns?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to add there. If we look at the 5 games that Deshaun played with the Browns last year, the Browns in those games, 20th in EPA per play, 24th in success rate, 16th in rushing EPA, 22nd passing EPA per play. The big key, they're bringing in Ken Dorsey from Buffalo, who was really, really good with Josh Allen and the Bills. I think kind of got unnecessarily scapegoated essentially early in the season for them not playing as well. There's been some talk about them being like kind of like a spread offense at this point. And I don't know if I entirely agree with that, to be honest, because we have, the head coach here of Stefanski. Like, how does that blend with Dorsey? Like, Stefanski is not a spread guy, historically. So like that kind of blend there is going to be really interesting. And also, I don't know if they believe in Deshaun Watson to be a spread quarterback at this point and distribute the ball and go through reads. That's just never really been his thing. It's always been like kind of like a playmaker who can, make plays off script and then still make some good deep throws. But like they were kind of almost trying to mask that. The worry is that Nick Chubb is likely out, 6 to 8 weeks, I would guess is probably his timeline to return and be effective. So I'm really interested to see what happens to that offense. They obviously added Jerry Jeudy. They still have Amari Cooper. David Njoku showed out at the end of last season. Again, I would say cautiously optimistic about a guy like Ken Dorsey and what he can do. I'm just not sure if it's what everyone saw from the Bills or anything like that. I will say they're going to play faster, almost certainly. Like that's like, borderline without a doubt, they're going to do that. And then defense-wise, number 1 in EPA, number 1 in success rate, retained Jim Schwartz, basically kept most of their team or like made a couple of small swaps defensively. They're going to be an awesome defense. Like I wholeheartedly agree with that. Despite the collapse against Houston, I think that was just more of Houston being really, really good. And so I don't know what to do with this team. Like I wanted to be like, oh, well, they're the clear third team, but I don't know if they are. I mean, they have an awesome defense. If their offense can do anything, they're going to be squarely in play to beat the Bengals and Ravens every game. I mean, they should be in basically every game. So that's kind of what I worry about with this team here. And, one of the bets that I alluded to was if we want to fade the Ravens here, you can bet 1-2 exact in the division. Bengals, Browns 1-2 exact is 9-1. Browns, Bengals 1-2 is 12-1.
So spicy.
I mean, again,
I like it.
If the Bengals and Browns both win 12, 11, 10 games, like which I think, again, is very much in the range of outcomes, and the Ravens come in third with 9 to 10 wins, like I'm not saying they're going to have a terrible season, but like they're not in the 11, 12, 13 win range. You're getting a good payout here, 9-1 or 12-1. So like I really like the Bengals. I think that the Browns are really, really intriguing here. But I don't know what to do with them. So I'm curious if you have any strong takes on the Browns, though, or if you're a little bit lower than I am.
No, I think the important piece that you touched on too is how much Dorsey is in this offense, right? Because I think oftentimes we almost like dismiss offensive coordinator hires when it's a head coach that's also the play caller. Stefanski's coming off of his second Coach of the Year award. He got a 3-year extension. Like this is his squad for sure, right? So how much does he give up in terms of what he wants to do and what he likes to do? Because it does differ from Ken Dorsey. Like again, and like what Dorsey does match the best versions of Deshaun Watson, right? And then again, we haven't seen that in a very long time. But do they start to adapt? More shotgun, more 11, more RPOs. Like I do think we're going to see more of that. How much do we see of that? Is that some sort of like in the middle meeting here? But I'm curious to see. They try to go out and support it by, getting a Jerry Jeudy to help kind of add some depth to that receiver room, which isn't necessarily a great room. We got a great tight end who, can block and do a lot. Like Njoku's kind of emerged as that dude. Often, like they had massive injuries, right? They lose, offensive lineman. He's lost Conklin in game 1. They lose, Nick Chubb in week 2. Other injuries along the offensive line. Like this team had a lot of like key injuries. So what they did last year was kind of wild to think it like 4 quarterbacks, right? Like we forget that we had Flacco, but yeah, we had like DTR starts in there. Like it was a mess for a little bit. So impressive for them to get there. Defensively, well, I mean, they were historically good for chunks of the season. Like we touched on what they did in week 1 against the Bengals. They held, I think, the Titans like 80 something yards at a certain point in the season. They played a bunch of terrible quarterbacks. And when they played bad quarterbacks, they didn't just dominate them. They embarrassed them. Like, again, like under 200 yards. Now, when they played offenses with really good play callers who used their predictability against them, because the Browns and Schwartz kind of are like, hey, this is what we do, right? In the same vein that we touched on with the 49ers and how Shanahan says offensively, this is what I do. I'm not going to adjust. We're going to beat you eventually with what we do. It's what Schwartz does. And it's hard to argue with it to a degree. It really worked. But I think part of what they were able to do against bad teams didn't work late in the season. Yes, the Texans were really good, but the Texans manipulated them to get them into heavy sets, get guys in the box, and we're going to throw out a 21. We're going to throw out a 2 tight end sets and do different stuff because we know that we can torch you if we get those looks that we want. And you are dying to give us those looks. So, look, we know year-over-year success is not super sticky. They need to add some wrinkles. But I think that there's also, at the same time, there's a little bit of like positive regression that can come out of it too. Like they were terrible in the red zone. Now, look, they didn't let anybody get to the red zone, so it didn't matter as much. But like the teams got to the red zone against them, they allowed a touchdown in 71% of those red zone appearances. No other team was north of 70. There were only like 8 or 9 teams north of 60. So that's not super sticky. That probably has some positive regression, right? They also forced a ton of turnover-worthy plays and didn't convert at a high level at all. Again, if you continue to get home, you're going to like turn some of those over. Like they should have had way more interceptions and turnovers. They recovered fumbles at a below average rate. So there's a bunch of like little luck factors based off of the disruption that they created that should have gone more towards their favor. So if they can continue to do that at a high level, they could be even better in some ways too, right? So what wrinkles do they add? They add a little bit more diversification in the pre-snap looks because, like, look, they're going to do what they do. They're going to bring four guys. They're going to bring a safety in the block box. They're going to play one high. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to press you at the line and see what you can do. We're going to try to get to you before 2.5, 3 seconds. And we're going to do that more times than not because we got the dudes up front to do it. So they're going to be good. I'm with you. Like alt win total is interesting. Like I would want to have bullish outcomes on the Browns because I do think that there are ceiling scenarios here where even if Watson is better, right? Last game before he went down last year, he looked pretty good. There's small bits and samples here and there where he looked somewhat it looked like an NFL quarterback. At times he didn't in the past, right? So yeah, pretty tough schedule. They have pockets of like very difficult games, a little bit easy, a little bit hard. And there's like 6 to 8. They get Philly, Cincy at home, Baltimore, that's tough. And then final stretch of the season, Kansas City, Cincy, Miami, and Baltimore. Miami at home in week 17 is nice because that's probably going to be a cold game for the Dolphins. But pockets of easy and difficult. But I'm kind of with you. Like 8.5 feels like.
Yeah, no, it's like, and they're not, the market doesn't really respect them too much either in a lot of sense, which is interesting. Like they're, basically between 3-point favorites and 3-point dogs in all but 2 games this season.
Yeah.
So like they're really not being like, oh, you're going to blow people out. And I think that's partially because of their offense. Like their offense doesn't have enough firepower to put the foot on the gas, at least in terms of what we've seen, to like get away from people and, like really put the pedal to the metal here. But I don't know. Again, like I wanted more reports on like what the Browns offense is going to look like. I don't know. Maybe needed to dig a little deeper and see like who's going to have control. Because yeah, I think people are just assuming Ken Dorsey comes in and has control. And I just am not ready to get there considering Stefanski's been there. They've been winning. Like,
Yep.
I just don't like, I don't imagine him just being like, oh, here you go, take over, no problem. Maybe it's more of what Ken Dorsey can do. I don't know. I have no idea, to be honest, but it's tough to be much worse than they have been in a lot of ways. So that's kind of like with how bad Deshaun Watson's been. Like they were really good with Flacco, obviously, and really fun. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just going to depend on Watson, and they're kind of like handcuffed to him with the ridiculous contract that they gave him.
They had an identity, right? Like especially early in the year, especially with Nick Chubb, like Nick Chubb fits the identity, I think, of this defense too. So I'm interested to see like if there's a dude that can come back a little bit quicker than normal, it's probably Nick Chubb. Like the dude like squats houses, like it's insane. So we'll have to see what happens. Pretty bad knee injury, obviously, and the fact that he's still not ready to go compared to how fast guys are recovering from knee injuries these days tells you how severe it was. But I think they'll be able to run the football with the guys that they have if the offensive line stays healthy. That's something that they didn't have last year too. So Wills, Teller, Conklin, some of those guys, missed some crucial time last year down the stretch. So yeah, I mean, those 3 teams are really good. And I think finding unique ways, like your angle of, saying that the market definitely thinks that the Ravens are the best team. If we disagree with that, finding unique ways to kind of capitalize on that, where it's a unique finish. Now I think the Ravens are still a playoff team, but I also think the Browns are probably a playoff team too. Because again, I think there's so many ways for that to go pretty well here. So yeah, the next team is interesting. Any other thoughts on the Browns before we get to the Steelers?
No, we can keep rolling. I think we covered it.
All right. Steelers are next. 50-1 to win the Super Bowl. They are 28-1 to win the AFC, 8-1 to win the division, and also 8.5 wins, but it's slightly juiced to the under. Again, I'm such a unique team. One of the toughest schedules in the league. They ran out Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, and Mason Rudolph at quarterback. They posted a comfortably negative point differential, and they made the playoffs, and they were 10-7. So it's like a like put it on your plaque kind of a season for Mike Tomlin in terms of like just this aura of like Tomlin doesn't have losing seasons kind of a thing. Like that was it, man. Like 10-7, that was not a good football team. They had some bad losses where like this team is like, who are they? Like, didn't they lose at home to like Arizona or something like that? They had some bad losses. I can't think of off the top of my head that I can find, but yeah, just, I don't think it's a good football team, but they went 10-7 again. They're fascinating because I don't think that they are anywhere near what's the Pats. They lost to the Pats. That's right. I was so annoyed at that at the time because I was like, that's going to cost us Drake May. Trying to get in that top 2 spot. We ended up getting Drake May, but we'll still to be determined if that was a good thing to be cheering for or not. We'll get there. But yeah, look, they're kind of stuck in limbo. Not a great place to be because I don't think they're actually like top level competitive, but Tomlin just doesn't seem to let this team bottom out. And for all the flaws that I think they're still not a good football team, I think that they have an identity. And I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how much they lean into that identity because they could be like really unique if they just decided to be like, hey, it's 1955 and we're just going to run the hell out of the football. Tight ends, jumbo packages, multi-backs, running quarterback, and just let Arthur Smith cook. What do you think about the Steelers?
Yeah, the only team to run more than the Steelers last year in terms of pass rate over expectation was the Falcons with Arthur Smith, who is now on the Steelers. So like, and it was actually a pretty sizable difference. It was like 2 or 3% that the Falcons, ran more than the Steelers, which again were by far the highest rate of the league. They, upgraded their offensive line a lot, have one of the best run blocking units apparently in the league at this point. Per the O-line gurus, I think it was Brandon Thorne and then Justin Edwards mentioned in his column as well. So, I mean, they're going to be able to run the ball, which is what we know they want to do here. And their defense last year, top 10 unit in both EPA and success rate, added Patrick Queen, Deshaun Elliott, Dante Jackson, Cam Sutton, who I don't think is very good, but I think their secondary is still a bit weak. But like the front 7 is really just going to be their motor. Watt, Hayward, Ogunjobi, Highsmith, and Queen. Like, I think that they're going to flirt with probably top 5 to 7 numbers again defensively, just because their front 7 is so good. So I don't know. I'm kind of tentatively interested because if they can keep themselves in games, like they're going to win a lot of games that they shouldn't. They're probably going to lose some teams that they shouldn't. But their schedule is just like they're going to have to go more towards the win a lot of games that they shouldn't to be on par with their last few years because I just like. Their post-bye schedule is one of the most unbelievable things I think I've ever seen in my life.
It is brutal.
We have to go through it here. So week 9 bye, week 10 at Washington. So not even home against Washington. They're only 1-point favorites against a Washington team that I think we all agree is very volatile. Could be good, could be piss. We have no idea. But, again, they're only 1-point favorites, even if Washington is not very good, which is what the market expects right now. Then they have Baltimore at Cleveland, at Cincinnati, against Cleveland again, Philly, Baltimore, Chiefs, Bengals to end the season.
They play disaster. all 6 of their division games, and the other 2 are Philly and Kansas City. That's rough. That's rough. I mean,
no one can survive that. Like no one can survive that gauntlet. I mean, you're talking about 500 is a miracle. Like winning 2 of those games is a good outcome for that section there. Just pray if you're a Steelers fan, and you're listening to this. I mean, just pray, because I don't know what you're going to do, barring multiple significant injuries to these teams' quarterbacks.
It's almost like we just need to set a reminder when we get to that point of the year. It's like you can that live, over under win total is there's some wins early in the schedule, possibly coin flip games as you laid out, but down the stretch, man, woo! I mean, it doesn't mean they're not going to win any of those games, but I don't think they're better than any of those teams outside of, like you said, Washington game is a coin flip, but it's on the road. And it's a volatile football team. So it's tough. Now that's another reason why you just lean on what you are. Right. And I feel like in terms of the quarterback situation, you kind of feel like at this point in his career, we kind of know what Russell Wilson is. There's at least a layer of unknown at this point with Justin Fields. Now, I think we all agree he's limited. He takes too many sacks. So does Russell Wilson. Takes a crap ton of sacks, right? So his ability to run, though, trumps any singular skill that Russ has at this point. They both can throw the deep ball pretty well. So, give it to the young guy, lean into this dynamic rushing offense, and keep the ball away from the other team. Just try to, again, play a unique style of offense that is really hard to game plan for because no one else is doing anything like this. Again, jumbo sets, you got big body tight ends. Just do something completely unique and different. You have a good defense. You touched on some of the defensive stuff. This is probably one of the best bookend edge duos in the league with Highsmith and Watt. Minka Fitzpatrick is just a playmaker in the back end. He missed a bunch of time last season. They survived it. There are questions. I think every year there are questions on this defense, especially in the secondary, and they kind of figure it out. Joey Porter Jr. Exceeded expectations without a doubt. Like, didn't get on the field much early, and when he got in there, he was really good. They started using him to shadow and do different stuff, and I think that Dante Jackson and Cam Sutton have questions, but I think they're upgrades from Levi Wallace and Pat Pete, who they used a lot last year, and some of the other guys that they rotated in. It was not good. Shannon Sullivan, it wasn't great. So again, if you have Watson and Highsmith getting home, it makes things all a little bit easier. So just dial it back and just, get some like wing T, 3 backs, maybe keep Russ under center and run some stuff with like Fields in the backfield with both, Jalen Warren and Najee, and just do something different. Just do something different, Steelers. Lean into it. Be a fun football team. You have not been fun in a very long time. And just try to do something a little bit different. I'll be interested to see what happens here.
Yeah, it was funny. I was watching the Steelers preseason game. By the way, I'm watching way more preseason than ever, at least beyond like the starters. Usually what I'll do is I'll watch the starters and then turn it off. But because hashtag intern Jake, has been grinding preseason bets and just absolutely crushing them. I mean, like 20-7 or something like that. I've been tailing all of them, so I've been like sweating like how many carries this guy's getting in like the mid third quarter of who's not even gonna make the team. But I'm like, how efficient can he be, all this stuff. But anyways, so watching the Steelers and Justin Fields is starting. And there was like, I think it was the second series. He like fumbled the snap, like wasn't able to throw the ball in the second play. So he like scrambled out of bounds for 4 yards. And then third down, had no pocket presence, didn't move up in the pocket, and just took a sack. I was like, this is Justin Fields. Like, I was like, he's just like, and there were so many other instances where like he didn't go through his reads. He just stared on the same guy. 3rd down and 9, threw a check down. Like, I mean, I'm like, you just every single time I'm like, this guy sucks. But I'm just like venting frustrations of listening to these field slappies in my mentions for the last like 3 years, talking about how good this guy is. But I think Russ is fine. I think Fields would be fine, but they're just going to run the ball so much either way. Like, it may not even matter. Like, I think it's going to be run, maybe a pass on 3rd down, maybe another run, maybe a run on 4th down. Like, they're going to run every single play, and they're going to be able to do it. They looked pretty good running the ball. I will say that there was some nice big holes for Najee and Jalen. Yeah.
That's what I want to see. I mean, I would love to see them just kind of take a swing at it. I don't know. It'd be so unique to see just this team just, you know what? Look, your wide receiver room is not great. I don't think George Pickens is a true number 1 win at all levels type of receiver. Otherwise you have some castaways and some rookies and stuff like that. Like, it's not like you're depriving any weapon on the outside that you need to be like really kind of honing in on and developing. Like, look, Pickens can win deep on the perimeter. You're both quarterbacks, whoever you go with, can make the deep throw pretty well. The rest of it, they don't do very well anyway. So like, just lean into who you are. Steelers fans, I am jealous of you because you get to watch Peyton Wilson. Can we touch on Peyton Wilson real quick, Connor?
Sure.
This kid is going to be a 1 contract player because he has like no ligaments in his knees. I know you made some money betting his under in the draft market. Linebacker out of NC State, who again, I think he's a 1 contract player. I just don't think, unfortunately, the guy's not going to have a very long career. He won every award at linebacker in college football. He's 6'4", 240, and runs like a 4.3. He's like a 9.9 RAS score athlete, and he is disruptive. And he's been awesome in practice, and I hope they just let him cook, because I think Patrick Queen's overrated. They got a bunch of other guys behind him that are like older and not dynamic. I think Peyton Wilson could be a legit difference maker for a really good defense. Because look, Patrick Queen was kind of a bust until he gets to play next to Roquan and with Mike McDonald. It wasn't going very well. And there's not some underlying stuff with Patrick Queen that's not great. So Wilson, I think, he's a great pass rusher. He's really good in coverage. He led all linebackers in coverage stops last year too. So he can cover. He's just going to be a really, really, really fun player. Again, you probably won't have him long, Pittsburgh, unfortunately, because at some point he's going to have another devastating knee injury, and it seems like you need ACLs in your knee to play for a long time in the NFL.
Spears says otherwise, bro.
I know. We'll see.
Doesn't have an ACL.
But I'm excited. Yeah, it's the second year. We'll see. But I'm excited for Peyton Wilson snaps, and I do think, like, again, I appreciate you allowing me to go on the tangent, but I think he can be impactful for this defense who, likes to blitz from the second level and do some different stuff. And I think he can do kind of all those things. And there are bodies in front of him, but like, I don't know. I don't think there's anyone near as dynamic as him. So he's going to be behind Patrick Queen for sure to start. But I think you're going to see this guy make some plays. This is just a guy that I think Coach Tomlin's going to love. So kudos, enjoy it, Steelers fans. Again, don't buy the jersey because, it's going to be one of those ones in a couple of years that you can't wear anymore. But he's going to be awesome while he's out there.
So are you 35-1 defensive rookie of the year too rich?
I don't think so. I almost I thought about it, to be honest, because I think some of the stuff that's happened in the last couple of weeks, like there's been a lot of positive drumbeat. I was concerned at first because Cole Holcomb's there. He was supposed to be the starter last year, had a bad injury. There's talk about him actually retiring. Landon Roberts has not been a guy that stayed healthy throughout his career. He's a really good run stuffing linebacker, but he can't really cover. He's kind of heavy footed. Not great. So then it's really now just Patrick Queen and Wilson. Now they use a lot of single linebacker, but I think they can use Wilson in a way that's a little bit of like a versatile edge guy, and they can use him in coverage, against bigger formations. So like I think he's going to get more playing time than I originally thought a couple of weeks ago, based off of some of the stuff he's doing at camp. So 35 is probably a little rich, but I don't think it's that bad. I think it's worth a look.
I mean, you got to play a couple bucks. You're waxing poetic for a couple minutes.
I know. Man, I'm excited about this kid.
Mad you'll be if someone just gets injured in training camp and he plays like every snap basically, in the whole season. And he wins and you're like, oh, well, I called it, but I didn't bet anything on it. So
I know. I was watching, I remember, watched the linebacker tape pre-draft, and I was like, this kid is unbelievable. And I dig in a little bit. I'm like, oh shit. He's going to be like a third or fourth round pick because the medicals are terrible. He's had like 7 surgeries while he was at NC State. But like when he's on the field, I mean, literally like Chuck Bednarik Award, Butkus Award, like top defensive player in college football, top linebacker in college football, led the ACC in tackles. Like, again, the movement skills for the position are awesome. It sucks that he can't stay healthy. So it's going to be a good one on the field. So 35-1, we'll probably have to play a sprinkle on Peyton Wilson.
Love it. It's awesome.
All right, sweet. Some other ways that I like your spicy Ravens stuff, pro Bengals. Any other ways that you want to bet the division before we wrap?
No, we did have some questions in the chat though about like other things like news that just dropped. If you wanted to touch on that real quick, I thought this is a good question for you. How much is Matt Milano worth to the point spread? Obviously out for the season, I believe, torn bicep, maybe torn something into his arm. I'm not equipped to answer this question, so go for it.
Yeah, I mean, the point spread probably not much, but I think he's he's definitely a better actual real life linebacker than IDP linebacker. Calls the defense, good coverage guy, can kind of do it all. Not a big like thumper, not a big like tackle guy, but I think he's a massive impact. They lost him last year, I think week 5, week 6, that London game where they got absolutely boat raced by the Jags, and they weren't the same defensively without him in the lineup. So it's a pretty big loss. I like Terrell Bernard, who they kind of young guy stepped up for him last year and then really stepped up when Milano went out. But I think it's an impact to a defense that's also overseeing a lot of change this offseason, right? Like Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde in the back end, just in terms of like at the spine of the defense, they're weaker than they were last year. So I think it's going to make a pretty big difference. Point spread, I mean, you'd probably be generous to say a half point, but it matters.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. And then we got another one from Jeff here, also staying on the defensive side of the ball. It's how you know that you're hardcore. It's like half of our questions are defensive stuff. Jeff said 3 weeks ago you covered the NFC South. How much does acquiring Judon change the win-loss total for the Falcons? Does it change tackle props for them? I'll take the first section of that. For me, it doesn't necessarily change the win-loss total, but I think it's a big – we touched on it then. Like, they should have drafted Liatu Latu. They should have drafted an edge instead of Michael Penix. Now they acquired a pass rusher. Does that make their defense good all of a sudden? No, but at least gives them some firepower. One of the worst teams in pass rush win rate over the last couple of years, and they had like basically no answer to that. So I think Judon certainly helps, but he's also 32. Like, I mean, this is definitely like a win now kind of thing. Again, just totally diametrically different than taking Michael Penix 8th overall and then bringing in Kirk Cousins and now getting Matthew Judon. I just, don't ask me what they're doing, but the current roster that they got on right now, I think will be better defensively than we've seen in previous years. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think it was a great move for them to make, and then it looks like Justin Simmons is coming along as well. So like pretty big upgrades in terms of the talent. Yeah, Judon's not young, but he's coming off of like a bicep tear in week 4. Was awesome last year. 4 sacks in the first 3 games, 28 in his first 2 years in New England. I was really excited about him in New England because I thought, again, like they don't have he's the best player in the team. And I don't love, I get like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna give him a big contract in terms of like tackles, props, or anything like that. Edge rushers don't make a big difference. But I kind of with Connor, I think the more impactful thing is I think it does solidify some of the questions that we had in the holes of the roster with the Falcons. Now, again, we're still worrying about a 36-year-old quarterback coming off of an Achilles injury. And how does that kind of, especially early in the season when the schedule is the hardest, how does that impact the Falcons? But overall, it's a win. I don't think you can like cut it in any other way. They drafted Braylon Trice in the 3rd round. They wanted that kid to play a lot. And he's out for the year. He's already been injured. So like I think that was like, hey, we're thin, but we could piece it together with some of these young kids. And then he goes down and it's like, well, okay, what can we go out and do? And they took a swing on Judon for only a 3rd round pick. So what was interesting to me is the Bears also were apparently in on the Judon stuff. That would have been, I think we would have pants off on the Bears even more if they would have landed Judon. So because you put Judon opposite of Montez Sweat, that's a different with that like back end of the defense is a different dynamic than like it's still just Judon with nothing else there, right? Yeah. So it's better, but I don't think it's anything super duper impactful. But yeah, I mean, I think he's still really good. And I'd worry if it was like, if he was coming off of a knee injury at early 30s, or if he's coming off like an Achilles, but a bicep tear, like, I don't know. I think he could probably still be explosive. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, I'm sitting here talking about how like light a bicep tear is, but like you could still, be on the treadmill. You could still be doing cardio. You could still be staying somewhat fresh with a bicep tear versus having to like come back with like, explosive lower body injury. I think it's less of a impactful injury in terms of how it hurts him this year, coming off of that this year. So
for sure.
Good move for sure.
That makes sense. All right. And last one here, we get back to finishing up the AFC North, which I guess this qualifies. Any opinion on Steelers 14-1, lowest scoring regular season team? Don't mind that. I mean, you're competing with like the Patriots and, I think that the Panthers offense will be a little bit better this year. Who else is in the top of this market? Like who else, anyone else off the top of your mind? I mean, I don't think it's a bad bet at 14-1, but
Giants are probably still a little bit better than that, but, yeah, who else are we looking at? I guess the Raiders, Broncos. I think we both think there's probably more upside to the Titans, Commanders, Cardinals. Those are kind of probably the next teams, I would guess.
Yeah, the market right now, we're looking at Pats plus 500, Giants plus 600, Broncos, Panthers, Raiders, Commanders, Titans, then the Steelers, then the Vikings. Yeah, I mean, out of that range, 16-1 on Caesars if you wanted a pop there, it looks like, but yeah, I mean, they're going to play so slow. I worry that they're actually going to be like reasonably efficient just because, but they're going to play super slow. So, I mean, they're going to be in a bunch of low scoring games. So yeah, probably shouldn't be 16-1, but I mean, there's a lot of really bad teams this year offensively. So we'll see.
Yeah, we haven't done the AFC East yet, but New England's going to be bad. I mean, they're going to be really bad.
We might have to do that one now, just to get it out of the way so you don't have to, worry about it ever again. Yeah. We get to talk about it and be done with it.
Yeah, they're going to be really bad. So, yeah, I on both sides of the ball. So, like, I would think New England makes a ton of sense. But yeah, I don't hate it. You make a good point. Part of it, the pace part too, could be at least decent divisional opponents defensively. That could be a piece of it too. So don't hate that look. All right, buddy. Good stuff as always. I want to remind folks before you take off, subscribe to 4for4 Bets on the YouTube channel. 4for4 Football as well on YouTube if you want to hang out and check out our new DFS MVP show this year with new bodies there that we're really excited about with Neil, Pat, and Davis. Very exciting crew that you're probably familiar with if you run in the DFS streets. Really excited about that. All of our other season-long fantasy content is on that football page as well. Again, you want to have Connor and I and all of the betting stuff here 4for4 bets in particular. Find the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts as well. Move the line, download, subscribe, rate and review. We appreciate all that. Continues to allow us to keep it free and do all that stuff too. Again, check out the site, 4for4.com/plants. Get the betting sub, get in the Discord, hang out with us, talk shop, get access to us for anything we do. I do rankings. People always want the wide receiver rankings. I've had a lot of success over the years doing that.
I love those suckers.
People want that. You want the defensive props. Again, we're a DM away in the Discord and always available for our subscribers. It's the most important piece of what we do. So thanks for hanging with us, and we will be back next week to continue the rest of the AFC. So for Connor and Ryan, we'll see you all soon. Thanks, everyone.